Welcome to Theater Talk. I'm Michael Riedel of the New York Post.
And I'm Susan Haskins.
Noel Coward was one of the great figures of the 20th century theater. He was an actor, a playwright, a lounge singer toward the end of his life. He is also coming to sparkling life in this really terrific new book, The Letters of Noel Coward, edited by Barry Day, who is our guest tonight. Welcome, Barry.
Thank you.
And I should say that this is not just edited letters. You're linking your connective tissue. Really, I think forms a true biography of Noel Coward. It's a terrific book.
Thank you.
We are also joined by our old friend John Simon, who is the drama critic for Bloomberg News. And you get introduced in a minute. Stay in your place. And John gave Barry's book a terrific review in the New York Times recently. John, welcome to Theater Talk. And then look what the cat dragged in.
No, listen, before you introduce me, I've got to tell you this. I was trying to look so relaxed. You're not right. And it was the foot version of this. I put my foot up on the table just to look like Katharine Hepburn. I don't know. And all of a sudden, the whole table.
And I want to welcome Elaine Stritch's foot to Theater Talk. Thanks for coming on, Elaine, who was a great friend of Noel Coward's. Welcome
Yes,
to the book.
indeed.
The foot looks a little bit like Katharine Hepburn's foot, doesn't it?
All right, Barry, where were these letters all these years?
Well, they were in a Swiss bank vault since 1973 when he died, and among many, many other papers, all of them unfiled. And when I was doing other works on Coward, I saw these 3 large suitcases, realized what was in them, and I thought, to hell with that, that is too much like hard work. But then, when I got into it, you realize there's a whole other life in there.
Yeah.
His private life, his secret heart, you know, and that's what we've tried to put together.
But do you get the sense, John, is he really the candid, the unknown Noel Coward, or is he always writing with a sense of the audience? Because these are sparkling letters, beautifully, elegantly written letters.
I think he couldn't help being witty when he didn't have any kind of restrictions put on him, which he certainly didn't when he wrote a letter. He couldn't help being witty. I think that is the way it came out of his pen or out of his mouth.
And Elaine, you received several of these letters. Was it
Yes.
always a joy to go to the mailbox?
And lost several of them, which just breaks my heart.
What happened to them?
Oh, who knows, you know. I was, you know, kicking my heels up for a long time. I didn't have little files where I put things away.
Right.
I just lived one day at a time. Now I do it differently with a different point of view.
But it must have been sort of a joy to get a letter from Noel Coward in the mailbox.
Well, who knew then?
Yeah.
Well, I guess so.
Oh, you knew
I
then.
guess-
You knew it was
but
Noel
yeah,
Coward.
but I didn't have that feeling about it. I just was so crazy about him, and he was. I miss the kind of friend I had in Noel Coward in the theater. I can't find him anymore. It was like when my husband died. I say in Elaine Stritch at Liberty, I say, I'd like to be married again, but I just can't find him, not even close. And I think we do keep looking for someone as magnificent as Noel Coward was.
But isn't that the key, that also he wrote to them and they wrote to him? And that is the point of difference I try to make in this, that you can create or recreate the relationship between these two by the tone of voice in the letter, never mind the content. Yeah. And that isn't what you normally get in letters.
Yeah. What's remarkable, Barry, is, as Elaine says, to have a great friend like Noel Coward, you get a sense that all the people he writes to, it's not just chatty letters to them. He's helping them with really deep, deep problems. For example, Marlene Dietrich, you know.
I mean, he was a kind man, and he had his friends, and he looked after them. And if they were in trouble, he would advise them, usually with a wagging finger.
So what was Marlene Dietrich's trouble?
She was
how long is this show?
Noel wrote a verse called "I am no good at love," and neither was she, although she was very practiced.
John, I want to ask you, there is, I guess, maybe some perception out there that Noel Coward is seen as light entertainer. But in fact, these are masterpieces, his plays.
Well, yes, I mean, lightness is not a crime. On the contrary, lightness is a virtue.
Well, you ask any actress, any good actress, what's easiest to play in the world, and it's heavy furniture. But to be able to write a light, as long as we're going to use that word, comedy That's the hardest thing in the world. The hardest thing in the world to play, to be in, to appreciate, to understand.
Yeah,
But in the end, the likeness now is being seen in a different light.
Yes.
The new directors, new actors are coming to this, and I think you would agree with the most recent production, Private Lives. They say, yes, this is funny, but it's hurting underneath.
Yeah.
And these two people, Elliot and Amanda, are killers.
Yeah.
They're killing each other, they're killing everybody around them. And a lot of Coward's work has got that subtext, which we've ignored for years, but now younger people are coming to it and saying, this is talking to me. We're living in troubled times. These are troubled people. I understand this.
Right. But still, I have seen some productions of Noel Coward plays where they play that subtext, and that's the heavy furniture, and I think that can kill the play when they overdo the sexuality, all that kind of stuff.
No, the hard thing is to stay on top of it and not. You don't bore anybody with deep feelings. You mustn't do that. They have to think about it later.
That's as bad as laughing at your own jokes.
Yes, yes. Yeah. Now you knew him very, very well. What was he like to go to dinner with?
Oh, just great fun.
Yeah.
Great fun. The thing that's hitting me, I could wait a little longer before I say this, and it might have more effect. But I'm going to say it now, because no matter when I say it, it's going to take effect. We're all sitting around here on a Friday afternoon in December, and of 2007, and I want to tell you about a night that Coward came backstage at the Savoy Theater and asked me to come up to his suite in the Savoy and have supper because it was his birthday, and that was Christmas. And I went up, and we both had a lot of champagne, and for the first time since I had known Noel, he kind of got very sentimental and a little weepy, and he said he started to cry. And that's a terrible responsibility. Wow. To be alone with a talent like that, and the ability of the man and everything, and to also accept the compliment that he was giving me, to even accept it. I was trying very hard to handle myself in the best way I knew how. And he started to cry, and I said, why are you so sad on your birthday? And he said, I don't think I'm going to live very long. And I said, what makes you think that? He said, well, my birthday reminds me of it, and I'm afraid. I always have said I'm not afraid to die, but I am afraid. And he said, I thought he was going to say, where am I going? And what's going to be waiting for me? He wasn't afraid of that. Do you know what he said he was afraid of? He said he was afraid that he wouldn't be remembered.
Amazing.
Yes, he did.
He had that fear.
Frequently.
Amazing to me. I said, and you know what I said? It wasn't bad what I said. I grabbed whatever came out of me. I didn't know what was going to come out. I said, oh, I went crazy. I said, and I'm crying, of course, and I've had a quart of champagne.
So he really felt, with all the plays,
I said anyone who wrote Brief Encounter is going to be remembered.
London Pride.
This is
Elaine.
Imagine anything.
And here we are.
Yes.
Here we are, aren't we?
Yeah.
Celebrating his birthday.
But he thought his works were perishable?
I don't think he thought that, but he came from a very insecure background. Things had come out through him. He was a conduit for many, many things, and he couldn't really believe that he was worth all that. But he was, And when somebody said to him in a late interview, sum your life up in one word, he thought for a while, and he said, this may sound corny, but the word is love. To know that you are among people who love you and you love them, that has made all the success more wonderful than it would have been anyway. And then he paused and he said, and that's it, really. He was a man who loved, a very sincere man.
John, Barry said he grew up insecure. Why? What was his childhood like?
His childhood wasn't bad. I mean, his mother adored him.
And he adored her. I mean, the whole first part of the book, these lovely letters to his mother.
He had scant use for his father, and even less use for his brother, but that didn't matter. he had this mother who surrounded him with mountains of love.
She loved him, but there was a lot of aggravation in there as well, because
Had to be.
she placed everything on him. The father was a weak, sometime piano salesman, and her life, such as it was, from the social background she was in England at that time, depended entirely on him. So he had to succeed, and he knew he had to, and he was always answering to her. But she kept every letter he wrote for 50 years.
The subject of mothers have come up, and I've got to tell you this. My mother met Noel Coward, and she just flipped. And he sent her a Christmas card the following year, and she carried it around with her to the Bloomfield Hills Country Club, and just happened to have it with her. And all that, she was so taken with him. Well, who wouldn't be? Now, the following year, that Sail Away closed, and after Noel did with Florence Henderson,
Girl Who Came to Supper.
Girl Who Came to Supper. And that Christmas, my mother did not get a Christmas card. And she sent a cable to Les Avants in Switzerland, where he lived, and said, "Dear Noel," she was very, first names and everything. She said, "Dear Noel, well, I guess you have to be Florence Henderson's mother to get a card this year." And Noel framed it and put it on the landing of his house in Switzerland, and it just was his favorite thing of all time.
Yeah, but she was only the girl who came to supper, whereas you were the girl who came to dinner
and stayed on.
and on.
One of the real revelations in this book is Noel Coward's work during World War II as a spy. How did that come about?
He was famous. He was Noel Coward. And so there was a man at the Foreign Office called Robert Vansittart, who was a permanent civil servant. In other words, he was there no matter who was in power. And he felt quite clearly there was going to be war. It was imminent, it was obvious, but the government were appeasing, and they didn't want to hear about it, Neville Chamberlain. So he recruited Noel and businessmen and other entertainers and said, "Go about doing what you're doing, be Noel Coward, and let me know what you hear and find and sense in these countries." And he did that from 1937 onwards. So he was a spy before the war broke out. He couldn't say anything about that until the end of his life.
And his cover is being Noel Coward.
Cover being knocked out. Churchill said, "You'll be no good. You're too well known." But Vansittart and later Little Bill Stevenson, who was the link between Roosevelt and Churchill, said, "That's exactly your cover. Nobody will suspect you. Go around being a bit of a silly ass, sing your little songs." And Noel said, "I could do that easily. I'm a splendid actor."
But he is being, while he's going around the world as a spy, he's being criticized in the British papers for being this silly, frivolous guy at the time there's a war going on and he's left the country and he's entertaining people.
Yes, they also thought that he was escaping because he didn't want to pay taxes, because he wanted to evade the Blitz. He got a lot of bad press in his time because people were envious of him. He was successful, he was charming, he was happy, he was beloved. And there's nothing like that to turn the press against you.
There was only one hero in those days. I lived there in those days, Winston Churchill. He was the lead man, he was on stage. He didn't like Noel Coward very much at all because he was competitive. And he was the one who stopped Noel's knighthood in 1942, and you see in the book there is a letter from him to the King, Mountbatten, and the King had approved it, just waiting for the nod, and Churchill said, no. He's gone through a case of currency restrictions, which he knew nothing about. This would be the bad sign. So he didn't get it till 1970.
Terrible, terrible. When did you meet him, Elaine? First time you met him?
I met him in Goldilocks in my dressing room. Yeah.
He saw you in the show? Came backstage?
Yes, and he said, I say in my show that he came to my dressing room door at 11:30, and I can remember, I've memorized it, I know what he said. He said, Stritch, he called me that right off, Stritch, your desire to keep it light, keep it gay, keep it fragrant, impossible, I'm afraid. The book is not very good, direction is not very good, the choreography is not very good, the lyrics are not very good. The leading lady is quite good indeed, and she is alone in her dressing room in tears, having a very, 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 very large scotch. Take heart, Stritchy. Any leading lady who doesn't do a double take when a 9-foot bear asks her to dance is my kind of actress.
And that sealed the deal right there.
And that sealed the deal, and next thing I know, I got sail away.
Do you know the way I almost met him but didn't? That was the closest I ever came. At one point in South Pacific, a friend of mine, an actor who was standby for Ezio Pinza, went on because Pinza was off. So he wanted me to come and see him, and I did. And afterwards I went backstage to congratulate him. And there was Noel Coward going backstage to see Mary Martin, with whom he had a huge falling out. Yeah. And this was the evening on which he came to make peace with her. So he was headed for Mary Martin's dressing room, and I was headed for my friend's. And I love Noel Coward, and I never ask people for their autographs except Barry Gray. I am Barry
Gray.
Oh, well.
We can correct it in the retake.
At night, all cats are gray.
Oh, hello.
So I thought, I had this book in my hand. I must get his autograph. But the book was Edmund Spenser's The Fairy Queen.
Oh, dear.
I don't believe that.
It's absolutely true. I was studying for my PhD at Harvard, and that was, Edmund Spenser was one of the things I had to read up.
Required reading.
But then when I talked to B. Lilly later, she said, you should have done it. He would have signed it with great pleasure.
It was the kind of thing that would have made him laugh, though, if you presented the Fairy Queen to be
You know
signed.
what he used to say when he went backstage, because when he was in the audience, whoever was in the show would expect him to come back. And if he didn't like the show, he still had to go back. So when they say, well, what do you think, Noel? He'd say, unbelievable.
Another fascinating, among many fascinating chapters in this book, are the letters between Noel Coward, as the grand old man of the theater, and all the young up-and-coming playwrights, Arnold Wesker, Edward Albee, John Osborne. Did they see him as a great playwright, or did they sort of see him as the old-fashioned kind of theater that they were trying to knock down with their new plays?
A bit of both. They knew he'd done wonderful things, but they were annoyed that he seemed to be out of sympathy with what they were trying to do. A lengthy correspondence with Wesker, who wanted plays for the masses, and Noel is saying, if they want it, they'll have it, but you can't force it upon them. And Osborne saying to him, now, it's not for you to tell me how to write. I don't need your advice on that. I'm doing what I did, you did what you did. But then they came to be very close friends. Yeah. And the ironic thing is that Coward in his own time was Osborne. He was the one who was kicking the dustbin, and Gerald du Maurier was pulling him apart for doing that. And it was the same way. But at least Noel said, you're right. Not my business, and they became good friends.
Yeah.
Also, Coward was very generous. I mean, Kenneth Tynan would attack the hell out of him. And then when Kenneth Tynan finally met him, he was afraid that Coward would ignore him or insult him or reject him. Coward was ever so nice to him, and he completely won over Ken Tynan.
I just want to wrap up with Noel Coward's own words. So if each of you wouldn't mind reading a letter that is a particular favorite of yours from the collected Letters of Noel Coward. Start with you, John.
Right. I wish I could sound like Coward, but I can't.
No, but you could just tell us who the letter's to.
It's to Elaine, and who else could it be? It says, Darling Stritchy, I hope that you're well, that your cold is better, that you're singing divinely, that you're putting on weight, that you're not belting too much, that your skin is clear and free from spots and other blemishes, that you're delivering my brilliant material to the public in the manner in which it should be delivered, that you're not making too many goddamned suggestions, that your breath is relatively free from the sinful taint of alcohol, that you're singing the verse of Come to Me more quickly, that you're going regularly to confession, and everywhere else that it is necessary to go regularly. I also hope that you're not encouraging those dear little doggies to behave in such a fashion on the stage that they bring disrepute to the fair name of equity and add fuel to the already prevalent suspicion that our gallant little company is not by and large entirely normal, that you are being gracious and attentive to Pat Harty's manager, and that you're not constantly taking those silly Walter Kerrs and Agnes B. DeMille to the pavilion for lunch every day. They only exhaust you and drain your energy, and however much you want to keep in with them, you must remember that your first duty is to hail a Stoddard, MCA, and the Catholic Church. I remain yours sincerely, with mad hot kisses, Anna Mary Dickey. By the way, who was Anna?
Who was Anna Mary Dickey?
She was a character actor in movies, wasn't she?
No, she wasn't.
Well, he loved anybody with 3 names.
Anybody with weird names.
But
That's
he often signed his letters with
Cassandra or Attila the Hun or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Elaine, you're on.
Is this me? Wait a minute. This is just a piece that I found at the end.
Read
It's
it,
to a
read
close friend, and I think I find it out in the middle of it. It's very short. Oh, Joyce Carey. Joyce Carey.
Right. Who was?
When it was
The
all
actress Joyce Carey.
all behind him, all of his social, when it was all behind him, and he was back in the safe haven of Les Avants, which is in Switzerland, he could write to Joyce. That's it.
Okay.
And this is what he wrote. Well, dear heart, as Coley, as in Porter, might have said, and to the best of my knowledge actually did, what a swell party that was. I could say that this beautiful heart-shaped, if slightly time-worn face is now creased in a perpetual smile of suitably modest gratitude, but that would be me being afraid to show what I really feel. I have been genuinely moved by so many of the things that have happened and been said about me simply because nobody needed to say any of them. You suddenly realize that a lot of the petty irritations of the past are just that, petty and past. I love that.
Lovely, yeah. And Barry, who edited Letters of Noel Coward, particular favorite
Well, I
viewers?
probably would have done one of these, but next best is what he wrote to Dietrich. He met her, held her hand metaphorically through many, many love affairs, Jean Gabin, like Stevens, Frank Sinatra, Edith Piaf, if you want to name, it could go on forever. He wrote to Dietrich because she was having this long affair with Yul Brynner, which she couldn't seem to get over. And he wrote to her from Jamaica, "Oh, darling, your letter filled me with such a lot of emotions, the predominant one being rage that you should allow yourself to be so humiliated and made so unhappy by a situation that really isn't worthy of you. I loathe to think of you apologizing and begging forgiveness and humbling yourself. I don't care if you did behave badly for a brief moment, considering all the devotion and loving you've given out during the last 5 years. The only mistake was not to have behaved a good deal worse a long time ago. It's difficult for me to wag my finger at you from so very far away, particularly as my heart aches for you. But really, darling, you must pack up this nonsensical situation once and for all. It is really beneath your dignity, not your dignity as a famous artist and a glamorous star, but your dignity as a human, only too human being. Curly is attractive, beguiling, tender and fascinating, but he's not the only man in the world who merits those delightful adjectives. Do please try to work out for yourself a little personal philosophy, and do not, repeat, do not be so bloody vulnerable. To hell with Goddamn l'amour. It always makes more trouble than it's worth. Don't run after it, don't court it. Keep it waiting off stage until you're good and ready for it, and even then, treat it with the suspicious disdain that it deserves. I am sick to death of you waiting about at empty houses and apartments, your ears strained for the telephone to ring. Snap out of it, girl. A very brilliant writer once said, could it have been me? Life is for living, and that is all that it is for. It does not consist of staring at other people's windows and waiting for crumbs to be thrown to you. You've carried on this hole in the corner, overcharged romantic nonsense long enough. Stop it, stop it, stop it. Other people need you. Incidentally, there's one fairly strong-minded man who will never let you down and who loves you very much indeed. Just try to guess who it is. XXXXS, These are not romantic kisses. They are unromantic, loving gooses. Nolly.
Oh, isn't that lovely? Oh, my goodness gracious.
Yeah. The Letters of Noel Coward, edited by Barry Day. A great, great book. Congratulations on its success. John Simon from Bloomberg News, thanks for being our guest. And, of course, Elaine Stritch, who is appearing in her show at Liberty at the Café Carlisle from January 1st until the 19th. One of the great shows I've ever seen. And I will be there to see it again.
The whole
Try to do it
thing.
again. The whole thing.
The whole thing. This is not the edited.
The uncut version. All the four-letter words
Does
are
this
in.
mean you have to share royalties again with John Lahr?
What?
Does this mean you have to share royalties with John Lahr?
Oh, you know John, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
She answered your question.
That says it all.